All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have fought with my good friend Unreal for a few days, and I won. I don't like to lose the battle with software. It turns out that my Unreal Engine kept crashing on Friday because I did not run a tool on my laptop, a piece of software known as Xcode. Xcode is the Macintosh version of Visual Studio, which Microsoft creates, so that people can author software for Windows. Xcode was designed to help people write software for Mac and iOS, for iPhone and all of the related devices. Xcode on the Mac will actually help Unreal to do its work when it needs to do things like compile shaders or compile the games themselves when you press the play button to make it go good. Similarly, on a Windows machine, Visual Studio will help to speed up the workflow as well. Both of those tools are free. They're pretty big downloads and installs. I will put some links onto our pages on Blackboard so that we can get these environments set up just right. Now, it turns out I had Xcode running just right for a previous version of Unreal Engine 4.23. The example that I showed in class on Friday, the living room that I had built it in 4.23, and everything worked just great. It turns out that for version 4.25, I needed the latest install of Xcode. You might, on a Windows machine, also need to upgrade your Visual Studio instance. But it wasn't just updating it, and this is what got me stuck for days. I went over to the App Store, I did the update, thought that everything was fine and well, except I needed to actually run Xcode. So by executing the program, running Xcode, et voila, all of the components could register with the operating system. A foolish step that is absolutely unnecessary that I just assumed would have happened when I did the update. Anyway, so if you are looking to update your version of Xcode, or you don't have it yet, make sure when you download it to your Mac, you run it once and that will register all the components with the operating system. And then you'll notice that things like compiling shaders and lighting and things like that are going to happen a lot faster. Unreal will do it by itself, but it won't happen as quickly. So maybe some of you haven't installed those tools yet, and that's why your workflow might be a little bit slower than what it could be. So for the remainder of the semester, I'm going to be using 4.25, I think. If I look over here at the library, you can see I do have both installed. And Unreal's kind of strange because it'll let you run the two different versions. It would be kind of like having Adobe Photoshop 2019 and 2020 installed at the same time, and you would see the different interfaces. So if I launched 4.23, I'd have a very different experience than what I want to have in the newer version. But lo and behold, there's yet another update, which I am a little bit leery about clicking on. And if you look down below, I still have all of these tests from before that just didn't work. So I'm just going to start from absolute scratch. I've turned on a tool that should theoretically show in the bottom left-hand corner my keystrokes. So keystrokes will pop up like so as I'm going along, and I'll do my best to shout out what mouse buttons I'm pushing while I do this. There's more than one way to skin a cat. You might find there's a better workflow than what I'm doing. You might find a tutorial online that makes more sense to you. Well, one thing I do want to point out is that working with geometry and what are called BSP brushes is an excellent way for you to rough out your levels, feel them, run around, see if they have good flow, and then over time you can replace them with physical geometry that you create in other tools like Maya or Blender. So let me get started. I'm going to try to move a little bit faster. I've done this recording several times. I've had technical issues there, including very loud fan noise, which I've rectified with a new microphone that I have set up. So let's get into it. I'm going to launch Unreal Engine 4.25. This is assignment number 1, and it has to deal with architectural visualization. So you're all going to be building a house. We're just going to start off with a single room to get ourselves familiar with the interface. But over time, we are going to build onto this. A second room, maybe if you want to go into a second floor, you can. I really want you to just play around with the interface and have as much fun as possible. There's lots of different options down here for project categories. I'm going to go with game, hit next. I could set it up as a first person, which would give me a first person controller in my scene, but I'm just going to go with blank. And we'll actually build out the first person over time using blueprints. So that's the first option in the top left. Maximum quality, this is something that you can change back and forth, but we do want to keep it at high resolution. We're going to try to get this looking as realistic as we can. Desktop console is great. We do want the starter content. So this is data. You're going to have to download it. So let's do that with starter content. My video card doesn't support ray tracing, so I'm going to leave that off. And I'm just going to call this Project 1. I'm just going to call it ArcViz for architectural visualization. All right, we've chosen the right version of the software, 4.25. If you have a newer version, that's fine. We'll figure it out. And I'm going to create the project. It takes a second here to initialize, but with Xcode and Visual Studio, this is going to happen for you a lot faster. it's not just loading the level, it's actually doing some pre-compiling. Because I've run this level several times already, I'm not seeing any messages down here in the bottom right, but you can keep your eyes peeled down here for what the rendering engine is doing, what the compiler is doing. I'm also looking at this from a high resolution view, the most beautiful look that I can get, which up here in the viewport, you can change from lit to unlit. You can see a lot of other things that we'll get into later, like reflection maps, for example. Whoa, that's awesome. But for layout, unlit is just fine. And it's going to save your computer a whole lot of extra flips and flops on the CPU doing its work. Yeah, your machine's just going to be a happier thing. So I'm going to set up a new level. But before I go there, I am going to think about the overarching organization of my project. Down here, we've got in the content root folder, we've got starter content. So I want to have a home for my stuff. And once again, this is just for fun. So I'm just going to call this my stuff. And all of my stuff is going to go in there. And while we're talking about the content browser in the bottom left here, this is where we do imports. You can press the save all button. We also have view options. And I do like from time to time to just switch back and forth between tiles and columns. And columns are nice because everything we generate in here, like a new folder, is going to be nice and small. And I can see more items all at once. So I'm just going to call this levels. And over time, we're going to have more and more stuff that we put in here, like props. That could be geometry we've created inside of another tool like Maya. We're going to have shaders. We're going to bring in images. They're going to live in the textures folder, maybe. And just for fun, I'm just going to throw in sounds. Leave it like that for now. For the programmatic folks out there, we might want to create a new folder for where our programming is going to go, where our blueprints are going to live. So now, in content, we have two nicely organized places to do things. So in levels, this is where I'm going to create my new level. And I'm just going to go with the default, and it will give us a bunch of actors. You're going to hear me use that word often. So actors is what Unreal likes to call all of the objects that end up on our level. World Outliner is where we can see all of those different actors. And this is what it just gives us by default. So we've got some cool atmospheric fog that gives some depth to the scene. It gives us a floor plane. That's a static mesh actor. So that's actually physically modeled in a tool like, for example, Maya or Blender. It gives us some lights, a sky sphere, a skylight. And when we look around, we can see there's actually clouds moving, which are really great. And that's happening, I believe, out of this sky sphere here. There's lots we can do with that by editing it, editing the blueprint. Now you'll notice as I move around the scene, the letters popping up in the bottom left, A, S, W, and D. And for those of you who play PC games, you should feel very comfortable with that. Now I am holding down the right mouse button the whole time. So just by clicking the right mouse button, holding it down, I'm orbiting my camera. But ASWD gives me strafe left, strafe right, W forward, wherever the camera's looking, and directly back on the camera is S. Q is down and E is up. So you just get comfortable using those 6 keys in hand. There's lots of little objects floating around, little actors that are doing work for us. Like there's the atmospheric fog, there's our skylight, and all the properties for those objects are appearing over here on the right-hand side under the details panel. Where it is physically in space, we've got its transform, location, rotation, and scale. These are things we should be familiar with from other tools. But every different actor has got different interesting properties that get exposed in the details area. Is it visible in the scene? Does it cast shadows? Et cetera, et cetera. Each one of these we're going to go into in detail over time, just so that we can make this look absolutely stunning. And then floating right here, we have this one entity that is called the player start. Any level can be set up to start with a specific object. It could start with a camera that's been animated across the scene using the sequence editor. We could start with a cinematic and then tell it once the cinematic is done to jump over to the player start. We'll look at that in the upcoming weeks. So for any reason you accidentally get rid of that player start, notice that over here in the basic set of actors, there is one that we could just grab and drag out, like so. And it comes with this pill shape around it, and that's the sort of physical barrier, the collision region for our...
Sorry, I can't make a phone call with your iPad.
Well, I wasn't asking you to make a phone call with my iPad, Siri. Sheesh, did I even say hello, Siri? Anyway, so that's going to be the collision edge for my player start. So when I press play, it compiles the level, and when I try to push down into the ground, I can't get through it because this ground plane is already set up for collision. Collision just means that one object is going to stop the other from moving through it. There's a lot to know about collision, especially when we get into complex geometry, but we'll leave that for another day. Now we got to build a room, and in that room we're going to populate with some furniture and some things. Where do you find that stuff? I don't mind if you go elsewhere into the world and you download some models, but I am going to be looking to create some stuff over time, some custom geometry that you're going to bring in from Maya or Blender into your house. Now, one of you had mentioned that texturing stuff in Unreal can be frustrating. Texturing things in any software can be frustrating. And one of the problems I think we get into is when we want to make something bigger or smaller. So if I wanted to make this an oblique room, my first instinct would be just to jump over to the scale and start stretching the width. But you'll notice that the checkerboard pattern stretches with it. And on this static mesh, this object already has UV coordinates. And as we stretch the object, those UVs stretch along with the geometry, which is a great thing if we have everything locked into proportion. For example, if I click this little lock here and I scale it larger and smaller, then my UVs will stay with it. But there might be a better way to produce all the geometry we need for this room. And I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so there's modes, and this is different in 4.25. We're going to go up here to this button, and we have this option down here for brush editing. We got to switch between select mode and brush editing mode. So we're going to jump between the two a lot. So you might want to get the shift buttons underhand. So shift 4, shift 1 to jump back and forth. If I go into the mode of brush edit now, try to grab a face, I can't. And somebody was astute enough during the class to point out that, wait, this is not a brush. This is actually geometry. This is a static mesh actor. And we can see that quite clearly up here. So this is actually would have to be remodeled in a tool like in Maya. The UVs adjusted and then re-imported for this to work properly. So I'm just going to blow it away. I'm going to get rid of it altogether. And I'm going to look at the place actors set over here, and specifically geometry, and start with the simplest of forms that we can get in 3D, which is a box. I'm going to drag it out anywhere onto my scene. I just got to click with the left button and drag it out into my viewport. And it's currently just sort of out there in space, sitting out in some weird location. Now I'm a pragmatist. I think with my left brain a lot when I'm designing. So I do want to position this at 0, 0, 0. Triple check, scale 1, 1, 1, rotation 0, 0, 0. Everything is reset in terms of its transform. And that's awesome. Now, if I go off for some reason way, way off into left field, let's go to left field. I can just double click on the box brush here to zoom over to that object, which is super great. It helps me to stay focused on what I want to work on. Or if, for example, I select a specific face or specific vertices, and once again, I have to be in brush editing mode in order to be able to select faces, edges, and vertices, I can tap the F key, and that will focus my view on the pivot point that relates to that specific sub-object. I can still click and orbit with my right mouse and ASWD around to see exactly what it is I have selected. So I'm just going to grab the top of my plane and drag it down. And you'll notice that it's jumping around like there's some kind of snapping going on. Let's zoom up here for a second, just take a look here. This control enables and disables snapping at this specific value. It's important to point out that there are what are called Unreal units, and that is currently set to centimeters by default. These I never use. I never work with these up here. I do turn snapping on and off occasionally. My rotation snaps, I can turn that off and on. Very handy, very, very handy. Because I'm going to drag this down and make this floor plane one Unreal unit high. And because this is a floor plane, I'm just going to jump over here, click on what is now called box brush. I can see it's typed as brush, which is awesome. And it is not like the other object, a static mesh. Click on the word once, wait, click on it again, it'll highlight. You can rename it very quickly. I'm going to call this my floor. Press enter. Sweet. So now I've got a floor plane. Scale's hard to master. And I think Chris James pointed out in his visit that he does a lot of mapping on paper first. I want to just rough out our room using the tools so that we can get familiar just moving around the space and overcoming some of the technical problems that crop up when we just start a project. Because it's very easy right now to just jump in and start pulling the sides out and making this into a good-sized room. But I'm already seeing a problem, and that's that my main floor is actually below the ground plane. And this could lead to some issues later on. So I can't really tell. I could try really hard to put that plane, to put that face right on the ground plane. Or, you probably already guessed it, I could jump from perspective over to the side, zoom up, I can just double click on the floor object over here in my world outliner and scroll in and out. If I need to zoom in and out, my right mouse button will give me the hand tool. And then I can just drag that up to snap it one Unreal unit above that red line, which I know is my ground plane. And also grab the bottom. I can click and drag a box in this view to grab an object, or just click on it and then drag it up. I'm going to drag this one all the way up to that red line. Jump back into perspective. Just take a look at what's going on here. Awesome. That's exactly what I want. So I know that this object is sitting perfectly on the ground. And that's the great part about snapping. So I can start grabbing the sides and pulling them out to scale this. And one thing I just want to point out, reinforce, is that when I'm modeling this way, all of my UV coordinates are just staying put. They're not scaling and squishing like was happening before when I was utilizing the scale transform on the detail editor. So yeah, I can just start pushing and pulling my faces around. Take a check. I'll double click on my player start and drop down my view, see where that is in sort of relative space, and push it down, make sure it doesn't penetrate the floor, and what the heck, I'll hit play. And I've got a world. Cool. Oh, it's beautiful to see the sun shining off of those tiles. There's a little bit of specularity on that floor. Super cool. So yeah, in play mode, it's the same. Right click to look around and ASWD to do your thing. To move forward, backward, straight, left, straight, right. Cool. Escape to get out of play mode. And my fans are going nuts right now. Yeah. So what's difficult for me at this point is having some sort of sense of scale. So this is why I think the starter content is really awesome. So I'm going to hop into view options tiles, and just to spend some time on the content browser, I can click on the folders here just to jump back to the root of my project. I can see that I've got my starter content there. Double click on it. And in here we've got some props that they give us. And things like windows and doors are going to come in handy over time. But this famous chair, you've all seen it before, I'm just going to drag this out onto my scene. I just grab the object right out of the content browser, drag it into my scene. And I'm curious, why is this not working? I see. And this is a common mistake. Brush editing is turned on. Switch back to select mode. Now I can actually grab an entire object and move it. Can I move the chair on now? There we go. So I just wasn't in the right mode. The player start object has got a blue arrow that points a bad size. You're a bad size. That's the way the player is going to look. So this is an entity that I don't mind rotating. So I'll just have it look at the chair. So when I press play, yeah, that's what it's looking at, which is awesome. Cool. For some reason, when I tap escape, I have to tap it a few times. Oh, my mouse had to be over the viewport in order for it to know exactly what to escape. So I can tell right now this is a really small room. Okay. So maybe what I'll do, give it a little bit more width. I'm going to change back my mode to brush editing and pull out the width of this room. And just a matter of press and play, jumping in, checking to see whether or not the room's feeling claustrophobic in its width or not. That feels pretty good. I'm not going to worry about the depth right now. Escape, escape, escape. Let me escape. It's so funny. All right. So I like the width of my room. So that's going to dictate now the width of my first wall. Now I could put a box out and just try to match it to fit, or I could be a cheater and just use the existing geometry that I have. Now, if I'm in edit mode, I'm going to keep selecting faces and edges and vertices. So I'm going to switch back, hold down shift and press the 1 key, and that's going to switch over. It's funny it showed exclamation point in the bottom left there, but my mode is now in select. I could just highlight the object and under edit use duplicate, but I notice when I do that, it's going to knock it over one Unreal unit, which isn't terrible. I mean, I could just take a moment to try to fit it back again. Or what's even more powerful, delete that object, I'm going to take my floor object and I'm just going to hold down on a Mac the Option button, and I'm assuming on a PC it's going to be Alt, but you might have to play around with it. But I hold down the Option key and I click and drag and it duplicates the object, maintaining its X and Y coordinates. So all I changed when I did the duplication was its Z. And I want to drop it back down so it's smashed right on top of the other. And that's the beautiful thing about snapping. So I might not like the depth of my room right now, but that's fine. I switch back over into brush editing mode. I'm going to grab this edge and I'm just going to slide it back. And now we've got the beginning of our back wall. I'm going to grab the top of my wall object and just drag it up. And I just love how the texturing is maintained. Now, I want you guys to remain constantly organized over here. So click on your object, wait a second, click on it again, and now I can call this wall 1. And we're going to have multiple walls, so unfortunately it just shot down here to the bottom. So I just want to show you a quick, powerful trick. If you use the Control key on PC or it's Command on Mac, I hold down Command, I can click and highlight several objects. So start with one, I highlight it, hold down Command or Control, click on the second one, and there's this button up here to create a new folder that contains the highlighted actors. So this is going to be my, we'll just call it floors and walls. And later on we can have another folder for props or furniture or windows and doors, just to keep ourselves nicely organized. And then we can start clicking on these to jump around our scene and move around faster, which is awesome. Cool. Hit play. I don't know why the escape button is not working perfectly as I want it to. All right, so this is pretty cool. Like the edge, we got to be very careful to make sure that edges don't penetrate one another. That causes all kinds of shader issues later on. So I know that that wall is snapped to the floor. I'm tapping escape. Listen to me, computer. Escape. There we go. Remember, you have to just hit it 5 or 6 times. All right, so I'm going to grab in edit mode this face here. And you know, some of you might like to work in a much more detailed view. So if you wanted to jump down here and look at the world from the left, you know, just to sort of see it from more of a architectural view, you can drag it out from there if you want. If you wanted to look at what are things doing from the top, you know, that's just like Maya. I'm going to press play and just see how that room feels now. We've got a little bit more space. If I wanted to, I could start bringing in other geometry that I found on websites. I could bring in a table. I could maybe model up a counter. Maybe I'll just do that for fun. I'll just make a quick blocked off coffee table in front of that chair. So escape, 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 escape. How many times do I have to hit escape before it's going to let me go? Escape, escape, escape. All right. Let's switch back over to, I'll just do this in perspective. I work a lot in perspective view. I just like it. Jump back to select mode. Go to my geometry. One thing I find that's really awesome about Unreal is it detects floors. So if I drag a cone in like that, it'll, I believe, don't make me a liar, yeah, it actually detects the floor. And it didn't just put it down on the Unreal floor plane, which is this, what looks like grid paper here. It put it on the actual floor that I created. So I'm going to throw a box out. I'm going to put it out in front of my chair. I'm going to jump into edit mode, brush editing. I'm just going to quickly, and this is what we do as designers of levels. And nothing's right, nothing's wrong. This is art. As we get into the nitty-gritties of the details, the devils of the details, later on, and we want to make a super realistic table, then we will. And we'll replace this object with that. So I just wanted to put in some kind of a desk. And since I'm loving this dupe tool, I'm just going to highlight my chair. I'm going to hold down Option. I'm assuming it's Alt on a PC. I'm just going to click and drag. Oh, nice. And then duplicated my chair. Held down the Option key. And I could just, okay, so I'm going to start duplicating all the geometry that I have in place. This is going to make this next step a lot quicker. And once more, I'm not going to use duplicate. I'm just going to hold down the Option key, Alt on a PC, click and drag on the object. That's going to extrude it. And as you guessed it, I'm going to go into brush editing mode, grab this face and just crush it down. The F key is your friend. If you press F, it will zoom right over to that which you have selected. And now you just grab this face here and pull it out. I'm going to show you a quick trick. Now, you have to be sure with my next play here that you are absolutely satisfied with the size of your floor. Because once you start to get into complex modeling, like I'm about to do, things can get more hairy down the line because you have to push and pull specific vertices for a complex object. I mean, we could just be happy with this wall, duplicate it, take the back wall, duplicate it, we'd be done. Just absolutely making sure that we're not overlapping other objects in any way. But check this move out. I'm just going to drag this wall cab back one Unreal unit. And I'm going to use this tool here, extrude. And yeah, as you guessed it, I'm going to extrude that out, one Unreal unit to match the end of my wall. And now I have a brand new face here that I can also extrude, switch back to edit, and then drag out. That's awesome. Bit of a time saver. Might not be super easy if you've got complex geometry. Say you had a floor with a lot of strange shapes. But yeah, you could do extrusions and follow the path if you wanted to. But I've gone back to edit mode, drag this over to this edge here, like so. Be careful not to go over. I need to stop one Unreal unit before the edge, extrude that edge. Don't show this again. We know it works in local coordinate. And drag it out until it snaps to the edge of my floor. Now I have a new face that I can extrude once, then go back to edit mode and move it perfectly into place. Awesome. F key is your friend. F key will center your view off onto whatever you have selected. And I think I've got that closed off just right. Yep, double check. I'm going to go inside a room, take a look around, and grab my player start because it's been bothering me. And I'm going to move it out here. So this is a good time to just start populating the room with some lighting. It's funny because construction workers will use trouble lights. We have to do the same thing. So under the actor setup here, lights, point lights. I'm just going to drag one into the scene and now switch over to lit mode. So you can see what's actually going on. Now the intensity of that light, I'm going to turn it down a little bit. It's a little bit hot at 8. Turn it down to 4. That should be okay. We're not going to really see anything until we build out the lights. We're not going to worry about that right away. Because the next thing we need to do is think about this. In our starter content, I've asked that you all include a window into your scene. So I'm going to drag that into place. I'm just going to use the rotation integer value here of 90 degrees on Z, and that should penetrate the wall and let it snap out. Okay, we might need to move that in a second here. I'm going to grab another box. I'm going to position it carefully. I'm going to use this as a subtraction brush, so it's going to cut a hole in this wall. I'm going to move it out so that it's on both sides. And then I have to carefully begin to move all of the faces to make sure that it just touches the edges of my window frame. Now, this might be difficult to do in perspective view, so you might want to switch over to your side views. I'm just going to give it a go. There we go. Try to get that just right. I might need to tweak it here in a moment in another view. This is my perspective view, so difficult to look in. I'm going to switch back to selection mode, move my object into place, grab my face like so. Just to get it to overlap the frame. Now, I'm going to hop over to a different view here. I'll look at it from the right. Yeah, that's nice. Now, snapping might not be helping me right now, so I'm going to turn snapping off. I'll go button up there. So I can be a lot more granular with my decision. Right-click, drag, and grab that face, drag it down. As long as it's overlapping the window frame, the other geometry is going to hide it, so we should be okay. Switch back to perspective. These need to protrude past the other faces, but they don't have to be this deep. So I'm just going to tuck these faces in just a little bit, like so. I'm going to jump back to select mode, there's shift 1, and turn off my window frame. The little eye symbol there, you can turn objects on and off, so I'm just going to hide my window frame. And with that object selected, I can look into the details view here on the right, go hen pecking around and go hunting for that specific brush setting over on the right, and change that brush from additive to subtractive. And it'll punch a hole in the wall. Great. That's perfect. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to have some fun here. I just throw the box. And see if I can't do this quicker. Shift 4. I'll jump over to the other mode. Try to line these up with my door frame. See if I can't get a view out into the world from the door. Now, I do have snapping turned off, so I have to be careful. I don't want to belabor this point too much. It'll go beyond the door. That should be okay. Up. Bring the top down just a wee bit. Go back to select mode. Push that out. Make sure it's just touching the edges of the door geometry. It's overlapping them, I should say. Brush editing. Just make these less obtrusive. Like so. And you can make sure it's sticking out just a wee bit. Shift 1 to go back to select mode. Select the object. And then change its brush setting to subtractive. Yeah, cool. and just punch a hole in the wall of the door, which is cool. Nice. I can't see my window frame because I have it hidden right now. So I'm going to go back up here, turn that on, and that looks fantastic. And just for fun, I'm going to start thinking about lighting. I'm going to grab a spotlight, throw it inside the window, turn on my rotation gimbal. That's with the E key. Just rotate that just a little bit. Have it look like there's some light shining in. Now my world light should be doing that, my sun object, but this is just for testing right now. The R key gives me scale, the W key gives me move. I'm just going to put this out like so. Yeah, it should be okay. That should just cast a little shadow into the room there. Yeah, cool. I think we're good. I've got one point light over here in the corner. I've got a spotlight coming in. I've got a sun system already pushing some ambient lighting from the outside. Now we should be good. So if I press play right now, things aren't going to look great because when we get to this point, and we should always be saving our scenes, don't forget I did build out here a My Stuff folder, and I've got a folder called Levels. So I'm just going to save this current as. I'm going to call it My House. I'll put it into the My Stuff levels. There we go. Let's save it up. Here we are. And I'm going to build out my lighting. And we can change the lighting quality. I've got mine set to production because I've got a good CPU. But you can pick different quality levels. I'm going to build out production level lighting. Build the lighting out only. It does take time. This is where Xcode and Visual Studio being installed really helps out the compiling of these types of things. Yeah, so very, very different situation now. Very cool. Nice. I might want to just duplicate that lamp. And I think I can just hold the Option key down. Click and drag. It's such a fantastic way to get things out into the scene quicker. And just to remind you that you can just go over here to the property collection and click and drag on these numbers to change the location of things on specific axes. Or nothing stopping you from jumping to the top and zooming out. Just grab that. Oh, sorry. Grab that. How did I do the spotlight? No, I duplicated. That is not what I wanted to duplicate. I just wanted to duplicate this one here. I think in this view, I can hold Option down and just click and drag as well. Whoops, duplicated the fern, which is fine. Which is fine. I can just rotate it. This is the trick in world building. So we just give it, with the scale locked, we'll just give it a little bit more scale. And I'm just working on that tree I accidentally duplicated. Then we rotate it. So I'm just going to make it look slightly different. Reposition it over here. That's done all the time in level building. Geometry is used over and over again. I might just put a central light over top the entire scene and just drop its lighting value down a little bit. I'll leave it. Jump back into preview, perspective, a little bit more light on the scene. Because I created a new lamp, I'll get you, everyone. I do need to rebuild my lighting. Hurry up and wait. Press play. So pretty. So pretty. Yeah. So it's interesting that we've got two of the exact same object in the room, but because I've rotated and scaled it, it's got variety. The user will never know that it's the same object. And that's how we do. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call it there. So this is what I'm looking for you to have done for Friday. I'm going to now edit this in Premiere, and I'm going to increase the speed so it doesn't take as long for you to watch it. All right.